Hello and welcome to Meet the Media. I'm your CBS McKaiser. Religion and journalism might seem incompatible. One lurks in the murky mysteries of the spirit, and the other is a no-nonsense broker of fact and action. And in this special pre-recorded Christmas broadcast, we focus on faith and journalism. Is it a match that makes sense? Or is it one that has to be negotiated quite carefully? I am very excited, of course, to also look in the first instance at the big stories of this year. And joining me today is Juanita Hunter, who is a political journalist for the Sunday Times, as well as Matuba Mahlachi, who is one of my colleagues here at eNCA. Thank you so much to both of you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
I think we can all agree it's been a crazy year for all of us personally, but also for the news cycle. How do we even begin to pick out what some of the top stories are? Or is it obvious?
Well,
who's going to go first? Juanita?
So I think that this year has been unparalleled, at least in the last decade or so. The news year has been chaotic, both internationally and domestically. But I think that the more the world is getting connected, the more that other stories or international stories are affecting us and are affecting what happens here in South Africa. And so we saw that with Brexit, we saw that with Donald Trump being elected president. But this year, in the South African political front, it was not even an ANC elective year, but it was such a chaotic year. And the local government elections was just one part of it. I had to remind myself that, this year was the local government.
Happens, right? But what about you internationally? It's got to be Trump, I would imagine. We'll get to South Africa in a second.
Well, for me, it is Donald Trump because I personally lost a bet to a good friend of mine saying that Hillary would win. And she said, no, actually, Trump would win. But it also exposes a lot of things that we experience here at home.
Sure.
I won't call people who voted Donald Trump racist, but when people...
go on.
But we saw people revealing their true feelings about what they really want and how they want to see change. I even saw somebody writing on Facebook that maybe South Africa needs their own Donald Trump for things to really
Call
change.
him Julius Malema, perhaps, or Herman Mashaba here in Joburg. But isn't it interesting from a media perspective, guys? I mean, if we look at Brexit, if you look at popular anti-immigration sentiment across Western Europe, you look at Trump, you look at here in South Africa as well, right?
Yes,
From a media perspective, isn't one of the big stories for the year when it comes to our own introspection how often we got it wrong, or at least failed to anticipate where the story was going to go, Juanita?
I think it's because it's not business as usual. I don't think that we were able to predict a Brexit. I think that there's no rationality now in politics. And so that makes it very difficult for very rational mind analysts and journalists like yourself and myself to say, I like to think I'm rational, but to say this will happen because of A, B, and C. We can't predict that anymore. And I think the more the world is becoming inclusive, the more people are pulling apart. And that has to do with economic challenges, that has to do with, global issues. And so, predicting that for example, the city of Joburg would be run by Herman Mashaba. It was something.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
Exactly. But on the other hand, though, Matuba, isn't the danger with some of our journalism the world over, without being too harsh on ourselves, but also taking an honest look at ourselves, that journalism is something like an echo chamber? It's a bit like we behave on Facebook and Twitter. And so, of course, if we take the Trump example, you are less likely, even in a chaotic, non-rational world, you are less likely to anticipate the Trump win if you don't take the hillbillies seriously. And there's a book out, and I say that in inverted quotes, Hillbilly Elegy. So if you are not living and writing and reporting from the scene of people who look very differently to yourself, you may miss their agency in your society and be surprised.
It happens all the time. We quite often we miss the story because we look in the wrong places, because we are so consumed in social media and Twitter and what hashtag is trending, and we don't focus on the real stories, which is being on the ground and being where the story really is. And a good example now is that most people are moving more to the urban areas to find better life, but actually there are stories to tell in the rural areas. And when big things happen, like the voting patterns change, when they change in places where we are not there as journalists.
Which leads to the question then, Juanita, how do we get out of that kind of echo chamber as journalists?
I think we focus too much on the chattering class. We are preaching to the choir. That's what we're essentially doing. Everyone's converted on Twitter, everyone's converted on Facebook, and we're preaching to the same people. Yet, and we're telling the stories about the certain class of individuals, the chattering class. And I think that we need to move away from that. And you ask me how, and I don't know how, because it's it's easier said than done. Because as much as we embrace Twitter, and as much as we embrace the information age as journalists, that has aided our reporting and really helped us to do things that we weren't able to do in the past.
That's right,
At the same time, it's quite difficult to move beyond what the US is facing at the moment, where senior journalists are just every day reporting on what Donald Trump tweets of the day.
Well, but out of the resources, there's juniorization, that doesn't help. So there's also an economics that explain why sometimes we fall short. Is there a big South African story for the year? I mean, what would it be? That Zuma didn't fall?
Well, I think it started with the elections this year, to be honest with you, because
Sure.
it's like we are little children who always saw our parents fighting, but this time the parents fought so bad they're not even sleeping in the same room anymore, and the house is very tense.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in the ANC. These elections revealed a lot of weaknesses in the ANC, and I think it also revealed citizen activism, what citizens actually can do to change their
Do you
own
share that
lives.
sentiment?
Yes and no. I think that the election story was a big story, but not the biggest story of the year. I do think that the revelations of state capture with regards to the Gupta family was something that has plagued the minds and words of ordinary people, in the sense that people have now realized what state capture is. It's been something that has been spoken about. The Gupta
What abstract terms? Yeah, now we've got a concrete sense of what
Yes,
it means.
that-
This
that-
looting that's happening in the state. And
also
elsewhere.
a state being engineered, or state institutions being engineered for looting, and that's a complete different ball game to corruption.
Very quickly,
I
10 seconds.
I think that the elections made people curious, wanted to know what exactly is wrong with this, with the Zuma administration.
Absolutely.
Because he's been presiding over a declining ANC in terms of winning votes. So I think it sent people to places where they never thought they would be, to finding out about the Gupta family and state capture and so
Absolutely
on.
correct. I'm going to keep you guys here. After the break, we're going to talk about religion and journalism, and whether or not it is possible to keep some of your views about your own faith outside of the newsroom. Do stay with us.